Good evening, I am Alexis Sostre. Today I'll be going over abnormal psychology of historical and modern perspective. First, I would like to begin to talk about abnormal behavior and what the book definition is and what it is to me to be abnormal. Abnormal behavior is a behavior that's inconsistent with individual development, culture, and social norms, and it creates emotional distress or interferes with daily functions. What does abnormal mean? Abnormal means to be away from norm. In society that we live in today, you were taught all these things to be normal, and if anything doesn't follow that social stigma, it is now seen abnormal. As a society, we have these things of what's normal, and if someone falls below or above this spectrum, they tend to be labeled abnormal. Being labeled abnormal should not be looked at as a negative thing, and it does not negatively affect someone's life and their daily functions or nor cause distress to them. An example would be in the United States, a woman that's 5'5", the average weight would be 140 pounds. If she weighs below this at 100 pounds or above this at 200 pounds, she is now to be considered abnormal for her weight because she does not meet the social normal what's the standard. When it comes to understanding behavior, you have two concepts that you should that always play a role. Your first one is going to be your culture. Throughout the world, there are many cultures that are not shared in every household, and sharing those with others may come off abnormal to them because that is not in their daily lifestyle. That's not how they go through life. So the way that you do things in your house may seem totally different to someone else who do not share those same values. As an example, we celebrate Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween, and those who do not partake in those holidays may seem abnormal because it is a norm here for us, because it's a part of our culture. And for someone who lives in the same area as you and that doesn't practice those, it can come off as abnormal. Another context to take into consideration is age. A child develops things that once used to be normal can now be seen as abnormal. An example is a child being at a physical and cognitive age of maturity and still bedwetting. Up until the age of 2, it's normal for a child to bedwet. They're still being potty trained, they're still going through learning themselves. But once you start hitting around 7, those times where the child's potty trained at this point and they're starting to continue to bedwet, that's when you should start noticing that there's something wrong and that you should look into it. Diagnosing a disorder. A diagnostic system that we use is to focus on the symptoms and scientific basis. Clinical presentation. What is this specific system clustered together? Etiology. What causes this disorder? Developmental stage. Does this disorder does it look different in children than it does look in adults? Functional impairment. What are the immediate and long-term consequences of having this disorder? Moving on into the beginning of times and when mental behavior started to get looked into, when treatment was looked at, is going to be during the Greek and Roman times. The study of abnormal behavior can be a research to go back as far as the 13th century BC. Physician Malthus introduced an organic way of treating mental illness by using plants and natural substances. Something that's still used today. A lot of people don't like take medicine, so they use natural herbs and stuff like that to self-treat themselves, or their doctor give it to them to treat what's going on. Hippocrates is known as the father of medicine. Hallucination, delusions, mania are just a few of the psychological symptoms that he identified that we still study today. Gland studies, the expertise in medicine were neurophysiology, neuroanatomy, neurology, pharmacology, psychiatry, and philosophy. These physicians are influenced of mental illness, made a huge impact in the health field, and we're still using them in today's studies. Moving through now to the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, that's going to be during the time of 14 through 1700. The devil and the witchcraft were sought to be source of evil. During this period, women were blamed more than men to practice witchcraft and have evil inside them if they came off different to those in the village. If you go back to high school, you might remember reading the book, The Scarlet Letter. Women were treated different if they acted different, if they were a certain way, or anything that they did, the same thing that men could do, women did, they were thought as be witchcraft. Diane Weyer was the first physician to specialize in the treatment of mental illness. The idea that abnormal behavior was linked with demonic possession came from Paracelsus, he believed that mental disorder was hereditary. Around the 16th century, asylums were created to separate those with mental illness from general population. Moving on to the 19th century and the beginning of modern thought, this was a turning point in the medical treatment for mental illness. One of those things was asylums. Asylums were still open, but the approach of the healthcare inside them were totally different. No longer will patients be chained up or terrible studies be done to them to figure out what's going on with them. Now they were more offered as, they would offer work, they had religious services. It was more of a humane treatment moving into the 19th century. Going into the 20th century, we introduced Sigmund Freud, believed that abnormal behavior would be established by the age of 5. There are 3 stages that a child would go through by the age of 5, and how he copes through those will change. How he copes through those changes are an important role in the effect of how his psychological development will be. Your first stage will be your oral phase. That would be your ages of newborn up to 1.5 years old. That's sucking, chewing. Those are pleasurable until the development of teething, which causes an aggressive impulse. Your anal phase is going to be your 1.5 to 3 years old. That's going to be your toilet training. The way a parent disciplines and controls the child can cause aggressive impulse of the child, leading to personality traits of negativism and stubbornness. The last stage is going to be your phallic phase, which is your 3 to 5 years old. This is going to be your psychosexual energy on the genitalia area, and the child derives pleasure from touching or rubbing themselves. During these stages of development, the child can acquire a negative experience. During the oral phase, if the child's breastfeeding and starting to teeth and the mother pops them while she's breastfeeding because of the pain, the child may have some negative experience to that. Or during the potty training stage, where how the parent controls and how the parents parenting comes off during the potty training time can also be another experience of a negative way if the parent is being aggressive, is yelling and forcing it upon the child. During those negative experiences, they can become fixated, not knowing why it will have influence on their daily functions. As they get older, they may have certain issues where they have stubbornness or they just can't control certain things and they kind of don't know why. I don't know why I act like this, but if you go back during those 3 stages before they hit the age of 5, that's probably where some of their problems started. You have models that try to explain current views of abnormal behavior and treatment. Your biological model is going to be your abnormal behaviors assumes a biological process of the body, majorly just your brain. With today's technology, we can now study more of the brain in depth with using CAT scans. Your psychological model emphasizes how important factors such as family and cultural factors may influence the development of abnormal behavior. So the way that your family acts inside your home, it can affect how you are on the outside in your environment and your abnormal behavior. Your cognitive model can be your abnormal behavior as a result of distorted process, internal or external forces play a role, and that is the way that you perceive things. Humanistic model is an abnormal behavior. In this model, it is a failure of the process to social actualization. So you think the way that you perceive is more important than what the actual world is. Social culture model is going to be your abnormal behavior. It is not the result only from biological or psychological factors, but from your social and cultural environment ones live. Your biopsychosocial model is understanding many different factors probably contribute to development of abnormal behavior. That wraps up the majority